Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I am the publisher, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield. Josh, I am once again in this new location. I feel like I want to, like, every show, I want to be in a new backdrop.
I love it.
I am in Shunk, Pennsylvania, which is in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, nice.
And I'm at my aunt and uncle's general store, Ballmonk's General Store. Started like probably 100 years ago, maybe not quite that long, 80 years ago. It's been in my extended family for a long time. So if you're ever in Shunk, Pennsylvania, stop in, get some food, get yourself some Shunk stuff, and yeah.
All right, if
it's
I am,
smaller
I
than
will.
Pocatello, if you can believe it. Josh, you could become a city councilor here too. You could live a double life. You could city council here and in Pocatello, and nobody would know.
That commute shouldn't be hard, right? How big is Shunk? Like, how big are we talking?
Oh, I mean, probably sub 1,000 people.
Okay,
I don't know, but like,
I'm going to be house sitting for my grandparents next week, and their town is about 300 people. So that's
that. You're on the right scale. That's
there
the
we
right
go.
scale
Okay,
here.
cool.
Yeah. All right, we've got a lot more European Open talk to get to, and so we're going to dive right in. We're going to begin with discussion of FPO and Kristin Tattar domination. Okay, just utter domination. Wins by 16 strokes. That's one off the record all-time margin of victory at the European Open. Paige Pierce did it 17 strokes a few years ago. And Josh, I mean, it almost felt over after round one, but it like definitely felt over after round two. And the last two rounds, it was just like, all right, well, we're just going to kind of like hang out here and watch like pretty weak disc golf. Like, I got to be honest, it was not the best weekend for the FPO field. Obviously missing some key players, Owen Scoggins, Cap Murch, Holland Handley, obviously Paige Pierce out with the injury. Quick note, she went in for surgery on Tuesday, and so the clock has started, and hopefully she's able to play by the end of the season. But there were no, I don't think was there one other under par round besides Kristin the whole weekend? It may have not happened. I have to double check. No, Heidi Leine shot a 1 under in the final round. That was the only other under par round besides Kristin. And so Tattar just absolutely obliterates the field.
You list all the players who weren't there, and it just, does any of them beat? So let me jump to a question that I've got written down next, and I'll expand it, and I'll let you answer specifically or generally. Does Paige beat Kristin if she's there? And then you can extend it to, does Paige, does Holland Handley, does Haley King, like, does anybody match the level that Kristin Tattar played at this weekend? Or you know, and was your argument that the field was just weak enough that this looks like the blowout it was, or is it just Kristin played so well no one was going to touch her even if the field was fuller?
No, it was going to be a beatdown no matter what. I mean, Kristin, in the second round, Kristin's front nine was so good that I was starting to ask Statmando questions in the chat, like, what is the greatest FPO round of all time? What is the highest rated round of FPO all time? Like, it was that good. She was 6 under in the front.
Yeah.
And the 4 under she'd shot the day before was 10, 18 rated or something like that. And it ended up not being, you know, one of the greatest rounds of all time. It was still very good. Mm-hmm. And she averaged 1,000 rated disc golf this weekend. So is it theoretically possible that a Paige or a Haley King maybe could have come out there and match Kristin? It's theoretically possible, but I really don't think it was going to happen. And I wanted to check. I went back and looked. What did Paige shoot last year when she won the tournament? What was her average round rating? Obviously, the course has had a pretty substantial number of updates, so you can't really compare scores. She shot 977 rating in 2022. Now, you know, maybe there's a little bit of funkiness there because they were playing the MPO layout. but plus or minus 5-ish points, right? Something like that.
Right.
I don't think it was happening, especially because Paige has not been in fine form. I think, and Tattar didn't even have to think or try for 2 rounds. I think if Tattar is put under a little bit more need to score, she shoots better in those final 2 rounds, and probably could have opened up a bigger score. So, no, I just think that Kristin is on another level, especially on a course like that demands precision and has had the power needs reduced a little bit and is asking you to be more just can you place clean 300 to 350 foot shots in the fairway every time? No one is better on the planet at that than Kristin Tattar.
Well, here's another stat for you, Charlie. So I went back and looked. Since I go back to Worlds of 2021, okay? That's roughly when Kristin kind of starts playing again and coming over to the U.S. and we start seeing... What does that say? Conveniently located in the middle of nowhere.
That's just a little YouTube special right there. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. So I went back to Worlds of 2021. Since Worlds of 2021, how many 1,000 rated tournaments do you think Paige has shot?
1,000 rated tournaments.
Tournament average over 1,000.
Since 2021?
Yeah.
2.
1.
1?
OTB this year in May. Yep. That was the only one. She's won several, but her only one that she was over 1,000. She was 1,004 rated at OTB Open this year. Do you want to take a gander at how many Kristin has done since Worlds of 2021?
It's been insane. I mean, it's 6.
11.
Oh my God. Wow. What's Paige's let's go back to 2017. If you got the stat Mando up anyway, what has Paige done since 2017 in terms of 1,000+ rated rounds or tournaments, that is?
All right, let's take a look.
So Kristin has done 11 in the last 2 years.
Since 2017, Paige has shot 15,000 rated tournaments. And since in her career, she has shot 18,000 rated tournaments.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. I mean, it certainly gives some ammo to the people who say Kristin has a chance to be the greatest of all time. And I think it's going to take more longevity for Kristin to get that accolade. But I don't think there's a question for me that if you want to take a snapshot of a 1 or 2 year period and say, who has been the best FPO player over 2 years ever? It's Kristin. I don't even care that there have been years where, Juliana Korver back in 99 wins every single tournament and is blowing people out of the water by 35 strokes. From a quality of play standpoint, given the era, given the quality of competition, Tattar's last 2 years has been better than anybody ever in FPO history. That does not make her the GOAT.
Nope.
Paige has that on lock for at least... Kristin's going to have to keep this up for at least another 3 years for me.
Yeah.
But it's pretty impressive stuff. 11 in 2 years. Holy smokes.
What,
I mean, and that's why she's got a real chance to get to 1,000 rated. I mean, it's going to be tough, but if she plays really good over the next 6 weeks, she could get there.
I'll give you one more stat. What do you think Kristin's worst tournament rating has been?
Ever in her life or in the last 2 years?
No, sorry. In the last, we'll say last year. This year, 2023.
In the last year. 950.
It was PCS 977.
You're kidding me. Wow.
She shot the rating that Paige shot to win European Open last year is Kristin's worst round rating or tournament rating in the past 12 months or past year, this calendar year.
It's unreal. I mean, it's almost, I mean, honestly, Josh, it's getting to the point where it's going to hurt ratings. Like, who watched the final round of the European Open FPO? I mean,
well, especially the time zone. No.
Right. You know, in the US, like, who's even bothering? Like, if you're going to watch it at all, you're just going to watch the highlights. I mean, if you're a huge Kristin fan, or you're like, you know, a big European disc golf fan and you want to see what's going to happen on the podium, there were some sort of interesting undercard stories. We're going to get to some of those in a little bit. But, you know, it was completely not in doubt. And the golf wasn't particularly compelling. No one was really playing great. It was kind of frustrating to watch as a commentator because it's like no one's making big putts. People just keep going out of bounds. Like, it was a slog. And, you know, Kristin is just like in total cruise control. And so, I mean, what are you going to do? I guess everybody else has just got to get better. Like, what else is there to say? You have to get better. If you want to compete and you want to try to beat Kristin, you have to get better. And like, this is the kind of thing that creates, when there's this kind of dominance at the top, it pushes people to work on their game more because they don't want to just keep getting dogged over and over again. And so Josh, obviously, you know, was much discussed. She completes her career Grand Slam, which, you know, Paige has done it. Paige won the first Champions Cup. Kristin won the second Champions Cup, and they've both career Grand Slam. That's obviously like kind of a misleading statistic at the moment because we've only had 2 years of the modern Grand Slam era. But I have a good feeling that this will sustain into the future and that we sort of have the start of the record books in 2021. And it seems like the perfect time, right? It's like post-COVID bounce, and it's like, boom, we have this new 4 major calendar to match all the other big sports, and we're going to have this nice, clear historical lineage moving forward instead of these random tournaments. Randomly, there's 5. Randomly, there's 2 majors. Now we have 4 every year. And who knows what's going to happen with Throw Pink. I don't. Let's not open the can of worms today. But it's a very impressive thing. I think what's even bigger is that Kristin can become the first to win a calendar slam. And that's even really when you think about it in the broader context. There was a year, I think it was 99, when Korver won both of the 2 majors that year. Does that really feel like a calendar slam, though? Like, it's almost, it's two is not enough, right?
No.
So
it's not.
This would be the first sort of modern Grand Slam. And she's got a great chance to do it, Josh.
Yeah. I went and looked. I think Katrina is the only other player who has the other tournaments necessary for a career Grand Slam. Minus Champions Cup.
Because Katrina's won Worlds.
Mm-hmm. She won European Open in
Did she?
2017.
Okay. I don't feel like I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, back in 2017.
And she's certainly won U.S. Women's at some point.
You know, interestingly enough, she's not won U.S. Women's since 2012.
Okay.
So she won it in 2012 and 2010. So it's been over a decade, but she has won U.S. Women. So Katrina just needs
she's going to have to get Champions Cup
to fill out the. Yeah, I would.
What odds would you put on her getting it?
Saying I think not super high because
15%.
I think that might even be a little high. I was thinking like 10 or less. And here's why, right? Like, I think when you look at age and kind of longevity of how long Katrina could keep playing, like I think her and Kristin are probably pretty close in that range. And so you need Kristin to fall off. That's first and foremost, is you need Kristin to fall off. And then you have to make sure that the likes of Haley King and, you know, Holland Hamley and the other list of all the young players don't get really, really good after Kristin stops playing. And so I don't know. I don't think it's a super high odds that Katrina gets the career, but it's possible. It's possible.
Her Champions Cup finishes third and fifth. It's got a shot.
Okay, here's her quick reference. Her third place Champions Cup finish was 16 strokes behind Kristin Tattar. Kristin was at 27 under. Katrina was at 11. So,
oh my God, dude. That's just, I mean, look at this. Kristin Tattar won last year's Worlds by 8 strokes. She won this year's Champions Cup by 12 strokes. And then she won the European Open by 16 strokes. We're just, boom, boom. Just going 4-stroke, 20-stroke Worlds win. 24-stroke U.S. Women's win. It's crazy. She's won 3 in a row. There's no end in sight. She's the best player on earth right now in FPO, and it's not even close. And we've talked about, challenger by committee. There is no committee. The committee was disbanded. It's unreal. What do you think about the course, Josh? Let's change gears here. Did you think that the course changes for FPO were appropriate and made it play better for the field?
Yes. It's a good start. I think that those changes did help a lot. And were they perfect? No, but I appreciate the effort, right? They're showing that they're actually putting some thought into the FPO division, which is already an amazing start. Number 2 is I think it did have an impact on the tournament, and that's what we were hoping to see. But I will say, I still think there's a lot of work that needs done. There were 3 holes. I'm looking at, UDisc. I want a cumulative.
We need aggregated course. Yes.
What? Why do I have aggregated player stats but not course stats? It drives me nuts.
We're putting it out there into the world. UDisc needs to have aggregated course stats over the course of the weekend, total percentage of birdies and par over the course of the weekend. We need it. 100%.
Hole, oh man, it looks like every hole was birdied at least once. So that's good.
But basically there were holes that were birdied literally once or twice total.
Correct.
And they probably need to be tweaked. It
looks like, just looking at round 4 after a quick scan of the others, hole 3,
but
hole 4,
look, there's some
6,
holes that are like
10,
that played
hole 12 and
hard,
hole 16,
but that were still appropriate. I thought, like 16, it played a little hard. Most people were laying up, but when Henna birdied it after eagling on 15, that was the sickest pair of holes of the whole weekend for FPO. It was awesome.
Yeah, but that Henna's birdie on 16 was the only birdie all weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some holes that did get birdied but probably need to be changed. But then there's others that I think actually were okay despite the lack of birdies. Like, how about 16? Most players were choosing to lay up, but there are players who have the power to reach that green. And in fact, I think there were players who chose to lay up simply because it was the safer play rather than that they didn't have the power to get across. But how about when Henna birdied 16 after eagling 15 in the sickest combo of holes of the whole tournament? I mean, just awesome to watch. And players, I think there are plenty of players who have the distance to reach 16 and 2, and they just chose not to go for it a lot of the time.
I mean, yes, but counterpoint, hole 16, Henna literally had the only birdie all weekend, and the best par percentage was in round 4. 65% of the field parred it. In previous rounds, though, like in round 3, 46% par, which means 54% of the field shot bogey or worse. That's
yeah, but I mean, like, weak field. I don't know. Like, the bottom half of this tournament was not a strong contingent.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I hear
You
what you're
can't
saying.
compare these stats to a Pro Tour tournament stats.
And you're right. But yeah, that's you're right that it is hard. But that number does. It's not a great number. I mean, Ella Hansen's in the field. Evelyn is in the field. Henna's in the field.
Yeah, well, Evelina tin cupped it and took herself out of the tournament. We'll talk about Evelina in a little bit. I guess my question would be, like, let's take 16 for instance. What would you want them to change?
I mean, that's the hard part, right? Like, I don't have a great answer about what they would change.
I mean, like, they could shorten the tee pad, I guess. You can't really change the green.
No, you could. What you could do that might be a little bit interesting is if you made the inbound zone. So, you know, the way it plays is like the hyzer, and it's the shape. You know, it wraps like a hyzer shape but you could change the shape where the inbounds is closer to the green, so it's more of a straight shot. Anyway, I'm not 100% sure how you change it, but
I feel like it's kind of like a get good situation. Like it's not an unachievably far hole for the FPO players. I think there were plenty of players who could have attacked and didn't because it was safer to play for par, and you don't want to take the big number, which I respect that. You know, like, that's probably what Anthony Barella should have done when he was out of position. It's a hard hole. I don't know. It's just a hard hole.
It is.
But my overall point is that I think most of the changes were positive. Like, for instance, hole 2 played much better now that it was at an achievable distance. It played like it's supposed to play for the MPO side. And so that's what you want to see. And I think there's probably a couple more holes where they need to make a couple tweaks to where the tee pad is to make it play a little bit better. But overall, I think the course was fair. I think that, you know, more players should be able to shoot 2, 3, 4 under par. And, you know, if you can't keep it in bounds, you're going to get burned. But, like, I think that should be an expectation of players at this level to be able to keep it in bounds on this course. It's hard, but it's not unmanageable. So kudos to the European Open tournament directors and, you know, staff for making the changes, acknowledging that we need to modernize, and I think they'll make a couple more changes next year, and then it's going to be in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk through our 10 under the radar storylines from the European Open. Coming up.
Pound's the best of the best. It's the quality, the craftsmanship, the vision for what a bag could be. Let's start from the beginning. I didn't choose Pound, I chose Levi. I trusted Levi to make the best bag possible.
He's always trying to innovate. He wants it to be perfect. And I think he's the kind of guy that nothing's ever perfect.
I trust the product, I trust the people behind the product.
At this point, I don't think anyone's disputing that it's the best made bag.
Welcome back to the Upshot. It is time for our top 10 under the radar storylines from the European Open. Some of them aren't that under the radar, but non-winner topics. Let's put it that way. Josh, I'll let you go first. What's number 10?
All right, number 10. We've got impressive new European names. You know, that there were a handful of players, especially on the MPO side, who I don't think are. I mean, we have the list, right? I can tell you right now, right off the top here: Vino Makala, Nicholas Ontala, Lauri Lehtinen, Jakub Semerad, Linus Carlson. Right? Oh, there you go. There's a lot of your
guys
Albert
we know.
Kalm, the guys you know. But I mean, you also had Nestori Tukkanen, Mauri Vilman. I mean, just a lot of players, and I think that's the opportunity of having
The Anis.
Yeah, the Anis, right? That's such an advantage of having such a deep European field, is it gives those players the opportunity to really showcase that, you know, they have some skills, even though at the end of the day, you know, the Anis, dropped way down, and they're 1,000 rated. I mean, that's kind of what we expected. We never expected them to be on the lead card. So it's always exciting to see that, and one of the great parts about the European Open.
Rasmus Salkaripi, he was awesome. I think he's someone to keep an eye on. I mean, that guy can throw a forehand 500 feet. Anneli Togias Maniste, she was great. Super fun story from this week. It was very cool to see lots of these new names and people that we might see in the future starting to maybe travel over to the U.S. or something like that. Number 9, this is a name that we sort of knew from the last couple of weeks. Hjalmar Fredriksson, the young teenager, is now 16 years old. He finishes 12th at the European Open. He beat out a lot of the names we just said. He got an ace on hole 2, and he is just really showing a level of quality at a young age that makes you think about him as a potential future superstar, right? This is Gannon Buhr-esque, and I was talking to some people who are watching him play, and they were like, you can see it. Like, he is a killer. Got all the skills, right? He's classic, new disc golf era player who can throw backhand, throw forehand, putt, all of it. And he's now, showing up multiple tournaments in a row against the best players from the U.S. and holding his own. And he's super young still. So definitely somebody I'm going to keep an eye on.
2 years ago, when he was 14, he was 955 rated and has shot up to 1,000 rated now. So, I mean, that's coming with age and that maturity. Definitely someone to keep your eye on. In number 8, Kyle Klein gets another major podium. And I think when you look at Kyle Klein's podiums, they are, we talked about how there are some podiums that don't feel like good podiums. And then there are podiums that really feel meaningful. And this is 2 podiums that Kyle Klein has been in the mix. First, it was the playoff at USDGC with Macbeth, and now only losing by a stroke and very much in it all the way to the end. This is impressive performance from Kyle Klein, who both has the Elite Series wins under his belt, but also is making strong showings at the major that are going to be important for establishing that he is a top player in the sport.
Impressive. I mean, and he's coming off of not playing particularly well. I think he was dealing with a little bit of an injury. And so for him to come out and play as well as he did here, it's a great sign. And it feels like he's knocking on the door of winning one of these. And I really wonder, in 5 years, who are we going to be talking about as the top 3 guys on tour? Eagle, Gannon, Klein, Calvin? There's a bunch of candidate players in that conversation, and Kyle Klein has to be one of them. He's kind of gone through some ups and downs of play, but when his highs are really high.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Let's see. Number 7 is, I just wanted to talk about this, the cut line. Not really about who made or missed the cut. That's always sort of an interesting conversation, but it was so far down because they didn't cut it at the cash line, Josh. They cut it pretty well below the cash line. I think MPO's cash line was 44 and the cut line was 72. Yeah. Do you like this? Because this is not how PDGA normally allows it, right? The cut line has to be at the cash line in the PDGA rulebook, so they got some sort of waiver. Do you like that they cut it way below the cash line?
No, there was no drama around the cash line. What makes the cash line cut interesting to me is that you get people who are good players who would have missed and not played on day 4, right? That's what's interesting about the cash line. When you cut it 8 strokes, or however many strokes behind where it should have been, I think it was 8. It just takes all the drama out of the cut line, and so no, I don't like it. I'd prefer if you can't play well in 3 days on a 4-day tournament, then sorry, that's it. You're done.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's sort of interesting to be able to play up into the cash on your final day, but to me, it should be, if it's going to be that way, it should be way closer to the cash line than it was here.
Yeah.
Too deep. It just sort of made it boring. What's next, Josh?
Number 6. We actually had some really well-known quality names make it up to the top 10. And we didn't talk a lot of them during the weekend because some of them started pretty far down. But Eagle McMahon, Calvin Heimberg, Ricky Wysocki, Chris Dickerson. Like those are 4 of the guys who are up there in the top 10 with you. And those are big names, right? We talked a lot about how the podium, Corey Ellis, Kyle Klein, Ezra Aderhold, not the names we expected at the top going into this weekend. But the back end was very much still full of the top 10 of names that we knew. Isaac Robinson took 12th, not far behind there. And so, the guys, they are still able to play up in those places. They just started too far out of position in order to make a real charge on the final day. I mean, Ricky's 11 down was sick. It just was enough. He moved up 7 spots, but fairly meaningless in overall tournament impact.
Too little, too late. Yeah. I mean, look, Rick is dodging the conversation a little bit because he's kind of been out this season, and a lot of eyeballs on Calvin because he's been playing so well on tour, and he's got this massive tour lead in the Pro Tour standings. He's like dropping 4th place finishes and stuff in the DGPT standings.
Right.
But and then he gets scrutinized when he doesn't perform, especially when he comes into the final round with a lead. But Ricky Wysocki hasn't won a major it's going on many years now.
Yeah.
And he wasn't close. Calvin was obviously very close. Calvin shoots his rating, he wins his tournament. And so Rick kind of survives the scrutiny a little bit because of where he is in the sport. But I think there's an obvious case to be made that people should be talking about Ricky, not coming up and even being in the conversation, compared to Calvin, who was obviously very much in the conversation. It's funny how expectations go, isn't it?
It is. It definitely is.
Number 5. In the MPO, no European players were inside of the top 10. And that's after they had multiple guys that we've never even heard of in the top 10 on the lead card.
Mm-hmm.
But all of them fade out, and we see, this is kind of a corollary to the previous point, we see the high-quality names, the touring stars from the U.S., climbing up that leaderboard over the course of 4 rounds. Is this a bad sign for European disc golf, Josh?
I don't think it's a bad sign. I think it's a bad weekend. But it's so funny because we just come off of a President's Cup that was probably the closest ever. And Europe almost got it done. And then we turn around and then they don't make top 10. It's too bad, but I don't think it's a bad sign, right? Nicholas Antela took 2nd at USDGC last year. Bad tournament. It's an unfortunate tournament, but I still think a European will get it done.
Albert Tom should have finished in the top 10.
Yes, he should have.
The day he was on the lead card, he just played horrible and took a 4-over. He finishes round bogey, double bogey, double bogey, bogey. And if he just pars out there, he's easily inside the top 10. So tough day. And, Nicholas, kind of disappointing. A lot of disappointing weekends from guys who I think should have been higher up the board.
Vino was on lead card in final round. You want to give somebody a hard time, give Vino a hard time. Crazy. Right? If he makes one of his 5 circle 2 putts, he is in the top 5 or top 10. That's it. So
tough.
In number 4, Henna and Evelina. Speaking of Europeans that didn't show up, my goodness, that was so disappointing. It was so, especially. Evelina comes off of her best putting performance since COVID at the PCS. And you really think you're okay, she challenged Paige last year. She was up there. She was in the mix. Can she do it this year? We were talking about her being the favorite. And she finishes a total of 25 strokes behind Kristin Tattar. It wasn't even the putting.
For what it's worth, she would have been top 5 if she didn't take a 9 on hole 16 on day 1. But I just think, to me, and I think Evelina posted about this on social media, she's like, I need to recognize when I need to be aggressive and when I don't need to be aggressive. And I'm like, yes, please play disc golf. Don't just go for it every time. Very talented player, but yeah, she and Henna both, it's just all gas. And they just took a gazillion OBs. It's hard to watch. And Hannah had so many. She was one of the most exciting players to watch this weekend. So her finish of wherever she ended up, tied for 9th. That was sort of exacerbated by a really poor final round. She just played terrible in the final round.
Yeah,
she finished 7 over. Only birdies coming on 17 and 18 when it was kind of garbage time. It's just, it's frustrating to watch because you know how good they could be, and they just didn't manage this course very well. You can't just. They don't have the advantage that they had in the past on this course when it was just they could throw so much further than everybody else that they would get birdies and no one else could. Now it's more of a fair course for the field, and they got burned by just going all out all the time.
Yep.
It makes for great highlights.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
To number 3, speaking of a really positive story from the European side in FPO, Heidi Leine, Eagles 18 in the final round, which on its own was sick. But that meant that she finished 2nd, and that her getting eagled there was worth $3,000 to her, because she went from being in 4th to being in 2nd, and the payout jump was massive. She ends up finishing ahead of Katrina, and just an awesome story. She's such a crusher. I think Leine could be somebody that we see come over to the U.S. and be a real contender on tour. I mean, she massively outplayed the other Europeans besides Kristin.
One thing to her credit, she hasn't missed cash this season, which I think, and she's played a handful of Elite Series events and also played Champions Cup. So I mean, that is an impressive accomplishment in and of itself. So in number 2, Ezra Aderhold gets a podium finish, and it's really remarkable to me that Ezra gets the podium finish, because when we were talking in the Rapid Reacts before final round, Ezra was the name of the guy who you thought could not get it done. And you were right. I mean, he didn't win, but for him to be the one who stays in the mix and is able to finish up there on the podium, that's a great finish for him, because there are areas of his game that he's a remarkably talented thrower, incredibly powerful, thanks to just the fact that he's jacked. But there are clear deficiencies in his game, especially on the putting green. And so for him to come in and putt, I think someone pointed it out in the Rapid Reacts on Sunday, he putted better than Corey Ellis did in the final round. And that's what Corey Ellis is known for. He went 90 and 40 in the final round. I mean, that is remarkable for Ezra. So big finish for him, and a big finish for his career.
Yeah, I mean, he had that brutal miss on 3 when he went out of bounds and ended up taking a par when he should have had an eagle. But other than that, he really did putt well. He was awesome.
Yeah.
So I think really positive to see him play as well as he did under the pressure. He did take the double bogey on 11. It's these little moments where it's just what could have been? What could have been? But hey, he was up there the whole weekend, and super impressive to see him handle a course like that as effectively as he did.
Yeah.
The number 1 story, Macbeth, no show, DNFs with a shoulder injury. And I got to be honest, are we going to see Macbeth just DNF with an injury every time he's playing really bad at a major? Because I'm starting to get the little question marks popping up over my head. It is what it is. I mean, if he's hurt, he shouldn't finish the round. I mean, he was in position to cash and he DNF'd. So I'm not saying there's some conspiracy here, but very disappointing showing from Macbeth. And, after a pretty good first round, he was 8 under, and it felt okay, he's the guy still. You expect him and Eagle to be the guys, and they just weren't the guys.
They weren't the guys. It was disappointing. I don't know. We should have a longer conversation about this another time, but Macbeth really does. When Macbeth is DNFing and pulling out of the majors, especially his best major, that's just not a good sign.
It's true. Before we wrap up, we're going to make very quick picks on the various silver-ish events, the Euro events and the Mid-America Open. We're not going to go into detail at all here. So Mid-America Open, I'm taking Gannon Burr and Owen Scoggins.
Kyle Klein and Valerie Mondahano.
All righty. Åland Open in Sweden. I'm going to take Eagle McMahon and Heidi Leina. And I'm kind of cheating because Heidi Leina is already out to a good start.
That's right. I'll take Silva Saarinen, who is back by 3 strokes, but took a triple bogey today. So she'll clean that up. And then I'll take Nicholas Ontala for the MPO side.
And at the Järva Open, going to take Alden Harris and Anneli Togias Maniste.
I'm going to take Isaac Robinson and Rachel Turton.
Picking the top-rated players in the field. Classic move. All right. That is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with you next week, and looking forward to getting ready for. I mean, we're only like a month from Worlds, so time to start getting focused up on that. We got some big DGPT events coming up, and hey, Ledgestone is going to have MPO and FPO. Good things. Good things. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on the Upshot.